We have had an absolutely wonderful week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks now, and it's a very important and natural fit for us, the Council of Canadians and CUPE, both nationally and of course in Ontario. We've been fighting issues together for years and years, and you reminded me when you said that it was 10 years ago, and I don't know if you know this, Sid, 10 years ago this fall that we launched Water Watch with CUPE and Canadian Environmental Law Association and the Council, and we're going to have a 10th anniversary celebration and big blowout this fall to celebrate what we've done. And you know, when you look back on it, we've just done amazing things in stopping privatizations around the country, in reversing privatizations around the country, in getting a number of political parties finally on the bandwagon in terms of vowing to undo NAFTA or parts of NAFTA that deal with water, the NAFTA loophole, the ban on commercial exports of water. There's been a huge movement, and it's come from below as all real change comes. So it's a very important partnership for us with CUPE. We often, Sid and I always say that, you know, while our organization is citizens and CUPE are workers, we're all together because, of course, workers are citizens and citizens are workers, and although a lot of ours might not be unionized workers, they might be retired or whatever, we're still very supportive of public sector unions and all unions. So it's really an important relationship. And we fought for public health together, and we fought for public education. And so tonight, and on this tour, we're fighting for public water. So it's not just against something. We're actually very much for something. It's our strong belief that we are fighting to maintain the public integrity of one of the last areas that has been targeted for privatization in our world. A lot of fights have happened around public services and social programs. In some ways they're privatizing the air with carbon trading and so on, and we've been really fighting here in Canada and around the world to stop the corporate takeover of our waters. So this Unbottle It tour is not just about bottled water, but obviously about the much bigger issue of supporting the notion of public water and protecting our water sources for ourselves, for other generations, and for other species, because we're not the only species living here on this planet. Now, before I talk about bottled water in the tour, I just want to remind us that we're living in a world running out of clean water. And it's against that backdrop that we have to ask ourselves about this issue. Something we all learned in school was that there's a closed hydrologic cycle. The water goes round and round. It can't go anywhere, and Bob's your uncle, right? You can use as much as you want, and you can waste as much as you want. It can't be hurt. Not true. Our teachers were not lying, but they did not know how capable humanity was of coming up with innovative ways to ruin things, right? So combination of polluting surface water and overextending and over-extracting river water to death. All of our major rivers are being extracted to death, literally. And over-mining of groundwater all over the world means that we're taking water from where it's needed by nature for a healthy hydrologic cycle to function, therefore creating deserts, and we are actually physically, literally running out of fresh water. In many cases, it's because the water is taken from aquifers or watersheds, and it's brought into massive cities, great big urban monsters, and if they're anywhere near the ocean, the water is sucked up by these thirsty cities and dumped in the oceans. We're not returning water. I work in many places, but the place that's perhaps most startling in terms of an example is Australia, where they are physically, literally, it's like putting a big straw down in the middle of what's left of their water, sucking it up, and either sending it out in the form of exports, all that nice wine you drink from Australia, and beef and cotton and everything else to China and Japan, but they're also sending it to cities like Sydney with 4 million people who send it untreated into the ocean. And they are so desperate that the Murray-Darling may dry up this summer or next. It was 46 degrees in Melbourne yesterday. I mean, it is unbelievably dangerous, important story. So as a result, not only are there parts of the world literally running out of water, all of northern China, most of India. There's got a horrific new study on the crisis in Pakistan, where 3/4 of the people don't have access to clean water. 3/4. Try to imagine what we're talking about. 22 countries in Africa. Of the 677 major lakes in Africa, every single solitary one of them is in crisis. Mexico City's sinking on itself. It's taken all the water out from underneath. All of the countries of the Middle East are slated for the end of water. Spain is in crisis. Italy is in crisis. The southwest of the United States is in crisis. The Colorado River is in catastrophic decline, according to a group of scientists. And the backup lake that was supposed to save it forever, the man-made lake called Lake Mead, has 12 years left of water. And I don't know what is going to happen then, although I have my suspicions about what water folks down there might be looking at. I think it's the water in our north that runs north. So as a consequence of this, and as a consequence of pollution and a consequence of deliberate poverty making under this neoliberal market ideology that has been upon the world for 30 years, enforced by the World Bank in the Global South, private water companies have come in and they are delivering water on a not-for-profit basis, and they are denying it to millions and millions and millions of people who can't afford to get access to clean water. It is, in my opinion, the greatest social justice and environmental justice a crisis of our time. It is the most terrible human rights threat of our time, the deliberate killing or the deliberate allowing of killing of people because they cannot get access to clean water. And when you're in a community, as I was for the Summit on Sustainable Development in South Africa a few years ago, and you go to that summit, that big UN summit, in this gorgeous suburb of South Africa, of Johannesburg, that has five-star hotels and office towers and so on, and you go into the meetings and there's boutique water everywhere, and then you just go out a couple of blocks and right there is a little river with cholera warning signs on it, and right across the river is Alexandra, where there is no sanitation. The sanitation is the way your sanitation is what they call flying toilets, where you use a plastic bag and you defecate in a plastic bag and throw it, and God help you when it rains, or you can imagine what it's like. This is the face of poverty. This is the face of injustice. And every 8 seconds somewhere in our world, some child is dying because we have allowed the system where their parents do not have enough money for these kids. So it's against that backdrop that we come to us and we say, well, what is our responsibility and what do we have here? And we happen to live in a country that's still blessed with good water. And we happen to live in a country blessed with abundant water to an extent, but we have bought into this concept of the myth of abundance, that we have so much water we never have to worry about it. Not true. For one thing, when the rest of the world comes calling for our water, we better be able to answer for whether we have or have not taken good care of it. And in a whole bunch of ways, we have not. But we also are growing and expanding and gobbling up that water very quickly. Certainly in this area, in southern Ontario, the growth is incredible. The new developments are making great demands on water, and we have to be very, very, very vigilant. We have to protect source water, we have to have integrated water management systems, and we have to support public water. We have to vow to say this water must be here as a commons, as a public trust for all generations to come. We must not allow it to get privatized on our watch. And one of my biggest beefs against bottled water is that it starts that process of privatization and allows our minds to think that's what matters. As to bottled water itself, why are we fighting it so hard? Well, first of all, it's highly, highly polluting. It uses a great deal of energy in a world running out of oil to make the plastic, to transform the plastic, and it produces huge amounts of CO2 emissions as well. Here in Canada, we consume over 2 billion liters of plastic water, commercial water, every single year. Half of that's in Ontario. Ontarians use as much as all other provinces put together, which is really interesting. Now, according to the plastics industry, we're only recycling about 35% of that in Ontario, which means that about over 650 million plastic water bottles, not everything else, I'm just talking water,